Scanning for audio.
Welcome to another Tin Dog podcast, number 149, where I'll be talking about the new DVD release, at least it will be very shortly, from 210 Meglos, a Fourth Doctor story. Before I do, I just want to talk for a moment, if you don't mind indulging me, about Shirtgate. Yes, Shirtgate may indeed be familiar to many of you. Others, however, will be listening going, what the hell's he talking about? Let me explain for a moment. The BBC own Doctor Who. No one at all is saying this isn't true. They own images, they own the copyright, it's theirs. Podcasters, however, just want to talk about it. All we do is accept that the BBC own, without any question whatsoever, that the BBC own these rights. If someone wants to buy a t-shirt that bears a podcast's name, or something made by someone who works on a podcast, and a few quid go to the people who run it in order to help pay for bandwidth, or in some cases, help pay for a hotel room at a convention in order to get more interviews to make their shows better, I can't really see a problem with that. This week, however, the BBC went to Zazzle.com and asked them to remove a certain podcast's t-shirts from their store. They went through them rather oddly and removed some which would have images that belonged to the BBC, arguably, and then just removed others which were phrases which weren't even copyright of the BBC. It makes no sense. It's only one company so far, but I'm sure the BBC are on the lookout for others. No podcast is in this for profit. God, we'd love to be paid to review, but we love Doctor Who so much we're willing to talk about it for hours and hours to anyone who'll listen, and that's you. So if suddenly podcast designs start changing, or music starts being dropped or changed, please don't worry. We'll still keep talking about our favourite show. We'll stay on the air as long as we can. Enough nonsense. Let's talk about Meglos.
I knew a man who solved the insoluble by the strangest means. He sees the threads that join the universe together and mends them when they break.
Hello there, I'm Doctor. I'm expecting...
Arrival noted, gentlemen. Welcome.
What are you?
I am Meglos.
I think what we've got here is a good old-fashioned doppelganger.
What you're asking us to do is impossible.
I think you forget who I am.
Where's the doctor?
He's betrayed us. Arrest the Time Lord. Stop him at all costs.
That's the problem with doppelgangers. You never know who's who.
I hope it was all worth it, Meglos. Stop, cut that patience!
We are about to release a power many magnitudes greater than any intelligence has ever controlled. Its potential has scarcely been touched.
If memory serves, and sometimes it does and sometimes it doesn't, Meglos is the last DVD to be released from the last season of Doctor Who. Tom's not looking particularly well. Lala's already asked to leave. Their marriage is imminent, followed very swiftly by the divorce. And Meglos is not my favourite story. To be honest, this and the following DVD release, The Mutants, were stories that I originally thought of as stuff I'd probably have to review at some point, but wasn't really looking forward to. I was never a huge fan of the storyline of Meglos. You see, somebody made an argument to me many years ago, and it stuck in my head. The day that someone does a twin or identical doppelganger storyline in a programme is the day that programme should be cancelled. Now obviously Doctor Who had done that approximately 15 years earlier with Enemy of the World. Obviously there'd been lookalikes of the Doctor in order to trap him and things like that. That's the Daleks had created, but actual storylines which hinge on some character looking like another usually sound the death knell for a series. This even happened in Murder, She Wrote, I believe 3 times. You can discuss that amongst yourselves at a later date. No, Meglos is an odd little character. It's an odd little story. But it's a much better DVD than I ever remembered it being. I'd only watched it on VHS a few times. I'd found the CSO just didn't quite do it for me. It was the first story ever to use scene sync in Doctor Who, and that I'll talk about in a few minutes, because it's the narrative, storyline, and that kind of nonsense I really should talk about first. In this story, as you can guess from my initial rant, Tom's Doctor is in it twice. A megalomaniac cactus, yes, you heard right, hires a band of ragtag mercenaries to kidnap a human being, for no adequately explored reason, bring him to a remote planet, plug said human being into a machine, and turn the cactus, yes, it's still a cactus, into a half-man, half-cactus, which then eventually becomes a full copy of the Fourth Doctor, after locking the Fourth Doctor in a time loop previously seen about 6 minutes earlier in another story. This is Bidmead's most scientific season. This is the least scientific of the whole series. In the interview on the extras, Bidmead actually says it's a much better story than he remembered it being. And I feel the same way. I really tried to look at it with fresh eyes. I saw much more groundbreaking effects. I saw much better acting than I originally thought was present. I saw a plot that actually made a bit more sense than I remembered it making. I'd actually forgotten that the woman who played Barbara in the original Doctor Who black and white era was back, playing a completely different part. Yes, there's lots of arguing with Tom versus Tom, which I'm sure did the actor's ego no end of good, and Lala puts in a perfectly acceptable performance. It just doesn't quite work, but I'm never quite sure why. So yes, in January, when this finally does get released, you can spend some of that Christmas money that's left over, and you won't be disappointed. One of the reasons you won't be disappointed is because the extras on this are quite good. Rather than just going for a standard making-of documentary, they've got the 2 writers back together for almost a pub crawl. Places where they used to work together, talk together and write together are all visited from the back of a taxi. Eventually, as I said earlier, they end up at Bidmead's house and have a chat with him about the storyline as well, with a rather pleasant side note to the fact that the house where the storyline was written was later on used by the location manager who knocked on the door, unknowing that they were writers of Doctor Who, and asked if they could use the house as Tegan's house that she drives off from in Logopolis. Now you can't tell me the world isn't conspiring to make Doctor Who all fit together nicely and tell me that story at the same time. One of the nicer extras involved in this is a short documentary all about the life of Jacqueline Hill. A retrospective including interviews with her husband and various cast members, all sharing the career of a very interesting and much underrated actress. Another extra on this DVD is the Scene Sync story, and that's difficult enough to say after a few pints. Scene Sync is the child of colour separation overlay, blue screen, as it was then. Basically, the incremental movement of one camera is translated using a system of gears and pulleys and possibly an electronic format to match the movement of a much smaller camera on a model set, thus allowing the miniature set to appear as the background while moving against the actors moving against a blue screen. These days, of course, it would all be done electronically and on a computer. But then it was a major breakthrough. It was definitely a piece of equipment of its time, and the documentary's absolutely fascinating. Of course, there's the standard PDFs and a load of other things. As I said last time, there won't be any Whostrology readings, mainly because people have bought them for Christmas for people, and I don't want to spoil the surprise. Of course, they'll be read out in the new year. If you'd like your own Whostrology reading, or perhaps you were expecting someone to buy you one for Christmas, please visit the Tin Dog website at www.tin-dog.co.uk and click the Whostrology banner, and that'll take you through to the eBay store where you'll be able to buy one. And so I'll bid you farewell until next time, where it'll either be show 150 or the Christmas show or a review of The Mutants. Either way, be seeing you. You have been listening to the Tin Dog Podcast. Doctor Who and its associated shows are all trademark of the BBC. No infringement is intended. Contact us at tin-dog@hotmail.co.uk.
Just putting your details into the computer, sir. Have you any metal objects or firearms with you today, sir?
No.
And where are you travelling to today, sir?
Skaro.
Skaro? That's near Mykonos, isn't it? And here's your boarding pass, sir.
Next, please.
BBC One, everyone's home for Christmas.